All right, we made it one day into the ceasefire, and both sides are already doing awful things. Right, the IDF is still occupying about half of Gaza, but they laid off. They laid off on Hamas. Hamas went in. They started executing Gazans. They executed 30 plus Gazans who were likely innocent. Right, obviously no due process. This is Hamas we're talking about. It's not a functioning government. So any outlet that focused on the less than 10 tragically killed Palestinians who were near the IDF militarized border, they did not cover the mass casualty event of the day. Right? You should have been focused on the fact that Hamas came in and started executing its people. And the people are already turning against Hamas. It's probably gonna ramp up from here. I don't know. Maybe this is part of Hamas's strategy. Like, I thought that they were banking on Trump wanting this peace to happen at all costs, even like sending U.S. troops there. And they had the leverage of starting up military conflict, but it appears that they're also trying to build up leverage through their own militarization. Like, they're truly taking over Gaza as much as they can, right? But here's one of these, one example of an outlet just covering one side of the story. And there's also the aid story. I'll talk about that after I play this clip. But this is the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur.
Of course, Israel cut all the aid in half, as Anna told you. So they're back to murdering. They're back to starving. Day one. We told you this government of Israel is a terrorist government. They're never going to stop murdering the Palestinians. They're never going to stop stealing their land and trying to create greater Israel. And they say it. They say they want greater Israel, and that includes Gaza as the West Bank. The only reason why that's not crystal clear to everyone in America is because the American media absolutely refuses to tell you what the Israeli government officials actually say. Like, for example, did you read everywhere? Did you see on cable news that Netanyahu said in Hebrew, as we reported yesterday, oh, the campaign's not over?
I mean, this coverage is just awful. Like, how it's the peace plan says for them to withdraw to this mid-line. They withdraw to the line. They're out of 50% of Gaza. How do you mischaracterize that as them annexing 50% of Gaza? Like, we've been over this. Does Israel want Gaza? Sure, if the international community was like, yay, Israel, just take Gaza, we don't care, then they would take it tomorrow and settle it. But that's not the world they live in. Netanyahu would love to continue his military campaign. He would have loved to never, sign on to a deal that insinuated amnesty for Hamas or release 2,000 prisoners. It's like, this is not how geopolitics works at all. But there is an element of truth here. Completely. Like, I don't disagree with Cheng's sentiment for half of this. The Israelis did cut the aid in half after Hamas very predictably could not get the deceased hostages back within the 72-hour window. Now they weren't provided with any kind of equipment to dig up the rubble or whatever, because that's probably dual use, etc. Could be used for terrorist attacks potentially. I don't know. Cookies are dual use according to the IDF. So I assume excavation equipment is also that. But the Israelis did say after the 72 hours that they would assemble an international task force to try and find the deceased bodies. This is kind of being presented in some pro-Palestinian networks as if the two sides came to an agreement that the 72-hour deadline didn't really matter. It's like, no, Hamas did kind of misrepresent their ability to get those hostages back, and they did massively under-return in that aspect. Does that at all justify cutting aid in half to a whole population? No. But on the other hand, 815 trucks got into Gaza like one day, I think Sunday or on Monday. It's like we don't have the same issue we had before. They're cutting their target from 600 to 300. And I wasn't even under the impression that they really had a target. Like, when they had a military, in the bulk of the war, when they didn't have a complete blockade, which they did at the beginning and then a little bit at the end in 2025. Not a little bit, it was 3 months. I assumed that the aid could not get in because the agencies weren't being, the IDF wasn't clearing enough, demilitarized zones or peace times during the day for them to travel safely. And that was a true bottleneck. But apparently they're just like cutting aid from 600 to 300 for some weird reason, even though 300 is enough to sustain the population. It's just like a weird thing to do. And it's what they can do within the parameters Trump's going to allow them to. Trump's kind of saying he would be for punishing Hamas if they didn't disarm, etc. But he's addicted to he already clocked this in as his eighth conflict solved. Of course, all those 7 conflicts do not exist; they're completely made up. But he has already put this on his resume. So I think that the idea of Hamas restarting the conflict is he doesn't want it. He doesn't want the IDF to go back in. That's why the 200 troops are there, right, to enforce the ceasefire. But so did the IDF violate the ceasefire when I think it was 7? That toll might be updated. When it killed the Gazans, they said that those Gazans were trying to reach a Hamas depot that was by the border, I believe the yellow or the red line that the IDF were supposed to withdraw to. Again, this is like every war crime ever, every allegation of a war crime ever. It's a totally loaded question. You have to make so many assumptions to even begin to consider like the idea that the IDF got a command to just like kill these Palestinians for no reason, and then come out very openly about it. It's absurd. But then again, the idea that Gazans would be stupid enough to go up to this border is also absurd. So you're kind of left in the middle. I also have a clip from Fox News commenting on Biden's tweet on this, and I like Biden's tweet on this. People, I mean, the idea that Trump is given all the credit for this, even though he really did not that much besides swear at Netanyahu a little bit, is a little bit crazy. So I like Biden's tweet, but here's the clip.
But of course, that's not to say that all Democrats were ready with appropriate praise for President Trump. You had some that were either silent or trying to give credit to the previous administration, to Joe Biden, claiming that he deserved credit. Former President Biden posting on X, "The road to this deal was not easy. My administration worked relentlessly to bring hostages home, get relief to Palestinian civilians, and end the war. I commend President Trump and his team for their work to get a renewed ceasefire deal over the finish line." Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett adding about Trump, "Raising hell at home and then pretending to be the president of peace is diabolical."
Look, hostages came home, and so I think it deserves praise from both sides. A peace deal has been struck. Humanitarian aid will be sent into Gaza. There's a commitment to rebuilding Gaza, so it helps both sides here.
Yeah, people forget how many hostages were released when Biden was president. Of course, Hamas gave up the women and children pretty quickly. I believe late 2023. Biden all, they all worked on that. The 2024 deals, hostage releases, etc. This is the final one, so it's the most significant. But to say that this deal followed a different formula or whatever, it's not about genius here. It's a convincing game. There's no such thing as just like tricking your like the two sides you want to negotiate with into like taking this deal that they never thought of before. And it's like that's not how it works. It's circumstances around them convincing them to make different choices. Both sides are at different places than they were in 2023. The basic formula has remained the same. And of course, Trump saying that the October 7th or the Russia-Ukraine war was caused by Joe Biden. We all know that's silly. What did he do with Russia when he was in office again? Oh wait, they were fighting insurrectionists in the Donbass, and he withheld aid from them so they could investigate 2 completely debunked conspiracy theories about the Clinton server being housed in Ukraine and the Biden crime family. Oh wait, that's what he did with Russia. Or maybe Trump, if he was in office, he would have just told NATO to withdraw completely their 1997 lines and dissolve into a majoritarian alliance, and probably eject from NATO. I mean, that's the equivalent of what Putin was basically asking if you look at his ultimatums. But Biden was pretty good on this. He could have been a lot tougher on Netanyahu. That's where Trump was better. But he had the advantage of time. It's very hard to put that kind of pressure on the leader of a country so soon after a terrorist attack, so I understand why Biden didn't do it. People saying genocide Joe in January of 2024, I think that's crazy. You can't expect a leader to, there is a valid claim for self-defense there. I completely disagree with it, but it's totally valid. It's legal under the UN charter, immoral by my standards, but by the UN standards, it's totally fine. I don't think swearing at Netanyahu in November 2023 is feasible for Joe Biden, but it was feasible for Donald Trump, and he should have done it a lot earlier when they were actually starving people a few months ago, and the deaths of children suffering from malnutrition were ramping up, approaching famine levels. Never quite got there though. At true famine levels, I think the deaths in Gaza would be 200 people per day from malnutrition. I think peak they were about 5 to 10, but that's still like 5% of Gaza in famines.